Okay, good morning, grade ninth. This is part two of the homework help and demonstration. Okay, as you can see by the title slide, I'm going to demonstrate questions 15, 16, 17, no, 18 and 19, not question 17. Okay, and just take note of what I've written here. Since I won't do the word problems for you, I made up the next few problems. They're not the actual questions from the textbook, but they're pretty similar. So there's no point in me doing the actual questions from the textbook because then I'm just doing your homework for you. And I know 90% of you want me to do that. But instead, I made up new problems, but they're similar to the actual textbook questions. Okay? So let's just see what we can do here. All right? Let's get started. So here's what question 15 looks like. And I've labeled it page 312, fake question 15. And it says here, on Sunday morning, Jamal had half his weekly allowance left. Then he spent a total of $8.50 on bus fares and a smoothie. He then had 50 cents left. How much is his weekly allowance? Okay, so what we typically do as math teachers is that we try to encourage our students to do a let statement. Okay, so let X represent what? Well, it's kind of in the last sentence here. This is what we don't know. So why don't we say that X can equal his weekly allowance? That's something we don't know. Okay, we don't know his weekly allowance. Now, what do we do know? Okay. All right, I'm going to try and spell know properly here. What do we do know? Okay, I'm taking the space on the side of the page here. What do I know? Okay, I know that after he had half his left. So half was gone already. Okay? Then my pen's a little wonky doodle to this today. Then he spent. Now, what operation do you think comes in mind when you say he spent? He spent. Okay, we're talking about, is it addition? Or we're talking about subtracting? We're talking about money here. Did we add money to him? Did Jamal subtract money? Did he times money? Did he divide money? Well, I don't think multiplying and dividing makes much sense here when we talk about the word spent. Spent usually means, well, I should say always means, subtraction. Okay? When we're talking about he spends money, then we're talking about subtracting. So whatever he had left, he spent $8.50. You notice that I'm attaching a negative or a subtraction sign. And then he had 50 cents left. So what I'm telling you is whatever the start was, and that's the part we don't know. We don't know if he started with $20, $30, $40, $17.61. Whatever he started with, though, the part that we don't know, we do know that he spent $8.50, and at the very, very end, he only had 50 cents left over. Now, let's talk about the start then. Well, at the start, he did not have his full allowance. Okay? So we're not going to write X minus 850, okay, is equal to 50 cents, because that would mean he started out with, if we just wrote X, that means he started with his full allowance. He started with a full allowance. Okay, so I'm writing in all caps. Allowance. I'm just going to write the letter A with a period to abbreviate. But he didn't start with a full allowance. It says he had half his weekly. So this is the key word here. So if X is equal to his weekly allowance, can't we say then X divided by half, X divided by 2 is half his weekly allowance. Half his weekly allowance. Okay? So the problem is clearly trying to imply or indicate to us he started on by Sunday morning. Jamal only had half his weekly allowance left. He didn't have his full weekly allowance. He had half his weekly allowance. So maybe we could put it all together now. So putting it all together. Putting it all together. The info. What do I mean by it? Putting the info all together. Okay. So, what did he start with on Sunday? He started with half his allowance. Half his allowance. All right? Sunday morning, he had half his allowance. Then what did Jamal do? Did he earn more money? Did he spend money? Did someone give him an extra $100? No, he spent $8.50. Okay? Now, you can write this zero or you can leave it out. It's up to you. The zero is not really that important at this point. And what did he have left? 0.5. In other words, he had 50 cents left. Okay? That is our equation. That is our two-step equation. The section we're on, 8.2, deals with two-step equations. We've built our two-step equation, okay? I would say in all my years of experience of teaching algebra to students, the biggest part is the beginning, all right? So you have to understand what the problem is asking you, and you have to, not only do you have to understand what is being asked, you have to understand what information the problem is giving, okay? So just to review again, on Sunday morning, Jamal had half his weekly allowance left. He spent a total of $8.50 on bus fares and a smoothie. I just made that up. And then he had 50 cents left. How much is his weekly allowance? Well, we always have to choose a let statement. Let X be representing his weekly allowance. Then, or we could have used this little famous symbol that I like and you'll maybe encounter in high school. Therefore, X over 2 is half his weekly allowance, okay? Half his weekly allowance. So, on Sunday morning, we're talking about the situation of Sunday morning, right? Sunday morning, he started with half his weekly allowance. He then went and spent $8.50 on bus fare and smoothie, and this is all he had left. Okay, so what do we got to do at this point? Well, we should now proceed to solve this thing. It's a two-step equation, and we know that when we have algebra, we do an undoing. It's working backwards. So if we reverse the order of operations, okay, what do we have here? Well, we have some subtraction to deal with. In other words, we always deal with the constant first. We don't worry about the divided by 2. Whatever the relationship this number is, it could have been 2x. In this case, it's x over 2. But in either case, it's multiplying or dividing. The coefficient of x, right, is dealt with after you deal with the constant. This is a constant. We're subtracting 8.5. Let's do the opposite, okay? When you are working backwards in algebra, well, that's an ugly 8. When you are working backwards in algebra, you always are in this process of doing the opposite operation. If the equation we built starts with subtracting 8.5, now we're going to add 8.5 to both sides. Okay, so we're going to add 8.5 to both sides. All right. That zero pairs itself out. That's a wonderful thing. And we're left with x over 2. Well, what happens when you have 50 cents and you add it to $8.50? You get an even $9. Okay? You get an even $9. Now, let's examine the relationship of x over 2. Well, what's implied here? Well, fractions is division. So we have division here. What's the opposite of division? We're going to multiply. And what are we going to multiply both sides by? A 2. So let's rewrite this. X over 2 is equal to 9. And let's just show, I'll just switch colors here. So we're going to multiply both sides by a 2. We're going to multiply both sides by a 2. Okay. Now, what happens then? Well, we've got 2x over 2. We essentially have 2x over 2. The 2's reduced to a 1x or just x. Remember, 1x is just an x, right? A positive 1x, let's be clear. A positive 1x is just x. This always stays invisible. You don't have to write that. And if you write it, I'm not going to mark it wrong. I'm just saying in high school, you're not going to see +1 coefficients written that often. They're always left invisible. It's implied. So 9 times 2 is 18. And so we're saying Jamal's allowance was $18. Okay? Now think about that. Let's just kind of think this through logically. Okay? So at the start, we're saying, right? Just to go back to we said X is his weekly allowance. Okay? So at the start, Jamal had $18. Now by Sunday, he only had half of it left. Okay, so half of it left means he only had $9. And then on Sunday he spent, right? He spent $8.50, right? So remember, $9 is the same as $9 with the 2 zeros. And so what is left? What is left? Well, guess what? 50 cents. It works. Okay, happy face. So part of doing word problems is, well, reading comprehension, right? There's some English language you got to understand there. You got to understand that spent means subtraction. All right, and frankly, there's no quick way of getting good at word problems. You have to do them. You have to practice them. It's as simple as that. Okay. I hope this made sense. I'm going to pause the video here and set up the next question. Okay. So this was fake number question 15. I hope that it's similar enough to the real question 15 that you can solve it. Okay. All right, I'll be right back.